All right, everyone, welcome to Tech Tuesday. My name's Tom Levine, and today we'll be going over Microsoft Edge and when you should use it. But more broadly, we'll also be covering some other internet browsers as well. Microsoft Edge is actually the newest installation of like the native web browser that Microsoft uses. And to explain that in a little less jargony terms, it's whatever people normally would use to browse the internet to download whatever browser they choose. I think that Microsoft Edge is a pretty good browser. It's definitely a step up over the things Microsoft has offered before, but we will get into that in just a moment. For now, just one or two things to cover before we get started. General housekeeping first. If you have a question, please feel free to type it in the question submission box. I'll be taking a look at those throughout the presentation, but I'll try to wait until the end to answer questions unless I think it's extremely relevant to what we're covering at the time. Additionally, don't forget to reach out to me. If you don't feel like, typing a question in the question box and getting it answered here and now, you could reach out to me directly at tlevine@crnstone.com or give a ring to the number on your screen. That's 513-487-5390. If you do reach out to me via email, please put Tech Tuesday in your heading or your subject line because I do have a rule set up to filter by that. Additionally, feel free to refer an agent to us. If you know another person who might benefit from CBIS's services, feel free to send them our way. You can refer an individual or employee benefit market segment agent to Cornerstone, and we'll pay you $250 once they place their first paid application. It's as easy as 1, refer an agent, 2, we track and monitor, and 3, you get paid. Lastly, don't forget about Cornerstone's market consultation program. Our very own Jess Larkin just started that up, and it's really good. She's a wonderful graphic designer, and she will absolutely provide all of our professional expertise to you. That said, it is first come, first served. Jess is a pretty busy person, so if she has time, she might be able to help you as well. So without further ado, let's get into internet browsers. It's probably the most prolific thing that people use in order to interact with the computer. A lot of people normally, wake up in the morning, their phone buzzes, and then they either start up an internet browser to look at news, or they start up their favorite, app to just goof around. But either way, the internet is pretty much something everyone has access to, and it's something that everyone has a lot of opinions on. One of the things that I recommend people do whenever they first get their computer is install their favorite internet browser. And to start off, I figured we'd start with the oldest, most prolific internet browser, Internet Explorer. Now, Internet Explorer is what pretty much everyone over the age of 40 probably has used or originally used in order to browse the internet. If I just go to Google real quick, well, I have a different search engine as my base one, but either way, everyone says, Google it. A lot of times when people say that, they just open up the first internet browser that they have, which is Internet Explorer. Internet Explorer was actually the original browser that Microsoft offered on all of its products. And while it had a lot of features, it was also pretty slow and clunky. As you could see just by the load time it took for Google, which is pretty lightweight, it still had a load screen. You saw things, load through the search. It's really kind of falling out of fashion. And there are a few different reasons why if you use Internet Explorer, I'd recommend switching away. The first is that people in the tech industry generally don't regard Internet Explorer as an internet browser, at least not anymore. Internet Explorer was really prolific and had a lot of internet traffic before other options came available, but it got very few upgrades. The last version of Internet Explorer available was Internet Explorer 11, and that was last natively installed on Windows machines for Windows 7, which is no longer in operation, or at least no longer supported by Microsoft. So this is kind of old now. In addition to that, the reason it's described as a compatibility solution is because it works very well with a lot of really older coded websites, things that you probably wouldn't access anymore. If you still remember MySpace and had one of those, the older versions of MySpace's website would probably interact well with Internet Explorer 11, but they're really not optimized for it anymore either. If you've heard of something called the Farback machine that loads like old versions of the internet, Internet Explorer is described as what you'd want to use for that because it has a lot of the older codecs that are used on older HTML file pages. That being said, it's clunky and it's old and it takes a lot of time to load things. It does have some features that most other web pages have. As you can see by what I just hit, it has a jump to home button up here in the corner. It has a favorites section here that you can use to store favorites, similar to most other internet browsers. And it also has a gear icon for settings, and you can actually get directly into developer tools through this, which used to make Internet Explorer a pretty good choice for developers. But nowadays, you're not even going to find current tools under here. It's not something I recommend using, and sooner rather than later, you're going to end up having a lot of problems if you're still using Internet Explorer, mostly with website compatibility. I know with AGB at one point this year, AGB is our proprietary software we use to give people secure access to their commission files. We had an issue earlier this year where Internet Explorer browsers were having trouble accessing the login page for it because it was not expecting anyone to browse Internet Explorer. But that's really all it is in a nutshell. Internet Explorer is also been described as the #1 web browser for downloading the next one I wanted to cover, which is Microsoft Chrome. Not Microsoft Chrome, I'm sorry, Google Chrome. Google Chrome is a pretty prolific internet browser, and it's got like 67% of the current market share. Chances are, if you're using an internet browser to watch this video, you're watching it on Google Chrome. And Google Chrome is a pretty great browser, but we actually don't have it here at Cornerstone. And there are a few reasons I want to mention for that. It's actually to the point where I couldn't even get it installed on this computer to actually do a walkthrough. Chrome is a wonderful browser, very well designed. It does have a few negatives, which is just eating up a bit of RAM on your computer's hard drive. Well, not hard drive, I'm sorry, but a little bit of your system's integrated memory. It doesn't normally matter. You probably won't even notice it unless you are running about 35 different tabs with 27 different extensions. But it does have that one downside. The other downside is that Google basically tracks every single thing you do on it, even in private mode, which is why we don't have Chrome installed here on our devices. I'll get back to it in a second, and I do want to go more in depth on Chrome. You might like it if you fully integrated with Google's ecosystems of products. If you've got like a Nest at home and you're running things on a Chromebook and you're using a lot of Google's product line, you'll probably love Chrome. It integrates fully with your Google accounts, and it's pretty wonderful if you're part of that ecosystem, but the data collection prevents me from using it really. But we'll get back to it in a second. For now, let's start with Firefox. Firefox is the second largest internet browser in use by volume. And when I say second largest, you might think it's got maybe 40% market share or something like that, and you would be very incorrect. Firefox actually only uses about, or controls 9 to 6% of the market of the market share of people browsing the internet. It's personally my favorite, and I'd highly recommend Firefox if you're going to use a internet browser just to browse the internet or Google things. But it has its downsides as well. Internet Explorer was too old to really get into in-depth, but I'd like to sort of walk you through the menus of Firefox because it's very similar to Chrome in its overall layout, and it has a lot of the common features that you're going to be getting whenever you download an internet browser. The first thing that I'd like to mention that kind of sets Firefox apart from most others is their focus on security. If you do choose to create a Firefox account, which you can get to just by clicking this icon in the upper right and logging in, then you gain access to not only saving a bunch of randomized passwords so you won't have to remember any of it, but you also gain access to Firefox's sort of web security. What they'll do is any password or username combination or even email account you have saved to this, it will constantly troll the internet through the dark web and search to see if it's found any data leaks or anyone sort of trading your usernames, passwords, other credentials online, and it'll notify you. So that way you can go ahead and change them. That makes it a lot more security focused than most other browsers out there. The other thing that you might want to keep in mind when using Firefox is it only collects data that it needs from normal browsing and crashes. That means it's not trying to log everything that you watch and view, unlike most internet browsers nowadays. But what it is logging is all of the sort of critical data that it needs to make it work faster and better. You have a integrated search bar up here at the top, along with a web address search. For instance, I could just go to www.crnstone.com, type it in there, and I can go straight to Cornerstone's website, or I can search Cornerstone, hit enter, and it will automatically run a Google search for Cornerstone. That's pretty typical now of most browsers, so it's something that's really cross-compatible with anything like Google Chrome or Edge, which we are kind of going to get to in a second. The other thing that you might want to know about Firefox is that it is lighter weight than Chrome. Chrome pretty much has done a lot better recently with being more lightweight. But the one thing that it hasn't beaten Firefox on is optimization with cores. To put that into layman's terms, if you have a higher end CPU, you're probably going to end up having better results with Firefox than Chrome. One of the detriments, however, is a lack of add-ons. A lot of internet browsers, Chrome especially, now have things called add-ons that you can sort of plug into your browser. Add-ons or extensions are what they're really called. In order to get into that, you normally just hit a menu icon and then go into your general settings. In Firefox, the way that you would do that is generally by clicking on your account and going into Account Settings, Manage Account, or by clicking on the drop-down over here and then clicking Add-ons, which brings you to Firefox's web store. Chrome has something similar as well, accessible in the same way, and this just lets you find a bunch of different add-ons that you can plug into your browser to get more customized things out of your web browser. A lot of people use news extensions, for example, the New York Times, in order to get little bits of updated notices and kind of little bits of news. One of the things that I use is called Privacy Badger. And what it does is it actually scrambles all the information that you're searching through search engines. So that way it tells you if things are trying to track what you're doing online, and it also hides your general browsing by feeding a lot of different things that try to monitor you, junk website addresses that you've gone to. It randomizes a lot of your experience online, which I personally appreciate, but if you like, targeted ads, you might not enjoy. One of the other things that you can do with these that you wouldn't be able to do with things like Internet Explorer are change your theme. Themes are just generally the look and feel of your web browser. As you can see, if I scroll through this, you've got a light version, a dark version, and a whole bunch of other themes here by a bunch of different artists. I'm going to go ahead and switch the theme to dark. I'm going to hit Enable. And as you can see, that changed the coloration of this top menu bar, as well as the little highlight over the active tab that I'm using. Tabs are just copies of web pages, and if you're kind of trying to switch away from Internet Explorer, this is where you'd notice the most significant speed up with any modern browser. If I hit a little plus here, I get a new tab. If I want to close one, click X. And using this, I can open up a bunch of different windows of websites. For instance, I have Cornerstone's Google search, cornerstone.com. If I can type it right, over here, and then I have my add-ons manager as well. Plugins are tiny little bits of code as well that run sort of in the background. They have this open video codec here by Cisco Systems and Levine content distribution module over here. These are both plugins that apply to streaming media. So without some of these plugins, you might not actually see my face while I'm talking today. One of the things I also like about Firefox is it has a recommendations tab. And if you're logged in, it will sort of log the type of things you've seen and the type of things you've used and recommend other add-ons. This is pretty much the limit of that personal data collection that Firefox does. Google Chrome will do something similar, but it'll actually not only collect all your data, it will also provide it all to Google, where they will then sort of sell it out to different advertisers. So that's why I personally prefer Firefox. But if you don't mind Google having your information, Google Chrome is also a pretty good alternative to this. You also gain access to your bookmarks through this little section up here that looks like a bunch of stacked books. That's why they're using the icon. Through this, you gain access to bookmarks, which are any of the websites you've put this little star on right here. You just click that to save it. One thing you should know though, if you want to remove it, you have to click the star and hit the remove icon there. Let's go ahead and just favorite this again real quick. If I go into my bookmark section here, as you can see, I now have Cornerstone's homepage bookmarked at the top because that's the most recent bookmark I've had. And then underneath that, I've got financial consulting and research and a few other websites as well. I can also go into my bookmarking tools over here, and I can, for instance, view the full bookmark sidebar or just change some general settings. That's generally how you would use Firefox. If you'd like me to go in depth, please let me know and I'll come back to it. But Firefox is pretty much what I'd use for most of your web browsing needs. Which leads me into Microsoft Edge and also surprisingly back into Google Chrome. Microsoft Edge is now the default browser that is selected whenever you buy a new Windows computer. Edge basically is the Internet Explorer of the new generation of Windows. And by that I mean if you're using Internet Explorer, please switch to Edge. It will not only be better for you and probably a little more intuitive, but it'll also be more compatible with newer websites that are coming out. What Microsoft Edge is kind of the culmination of Microsoft realizing that they can't actually make a web browser to compete with Google Chrome or with Firefox without sort of adopting their new strategies. So you wind up with something a little bit like this. Microsoft Edge originally launched with a different view and a different appearance, and it was not what you're seeing on the screen right now. It actually started with a little bit of a different view. It looked, if I can get it here, sorry, give me one moment. It looked a little something like this. This is MSN.com's view, but this is old Edge. I'm going to full screen it there and zoom in a bit for you as well. But Old Edge was the original version of Microsoft Edge that released way back when they were trying to replace their old internet browsers. What it did is it took a bunch of the newer looking layouts and applied them to basically Internet Explorer script. It was not very popular as a result, and so I believe about 2 years ago they swapped it and changed it to a Internet Explorer sort of thing based off of Chromium. Chromium is the open source version of Google Chrome. So the reason I said I wasn't going to cover Google Chrome at first until I get a little bit later is because basically Microsoft Edge is Google Chrome reskinned to be Microsoft's version. One of the things that I like about it is that it has a very simplistic view. If you've used Google Chrome in the past, you probably recognize the refresh, forward and back keys from over here for browsing the internet, as well as this little add this page to favorites icon over here on the right-hand side. It looks a lot less busy than Firefox, in my opinion, as well, and it seems very streamlined. Anything you add to the favorites goes right here in this bottom bar, versus having to click on like a favorites folder and then going in depth. Or you could also quickly access favorites by clicking this little favorite icon here. You get to organize your favorites by folders. For instance, under Other Favorites and Best Favorites, I have Cornerstone's homepage right here. And as you can see, it just leads us straight there. It also adds something right over here called collections. What collections is it's sort of like favorites enhanced. What it lets you do is it lets you save a bunch of clips of websites. So if you're trying to remember like a certain section of an article, you can add it to collections, and I'll show you how to do that in a minute. It also lets you keep organized and annotate why you took that little clip, and even link directly across any devices. The way that works is if you have a Microsoft device and you want to transfer your collections, you can just hit the Sync Collections Across tabs, and then you scan the QR code that it will generate with your device. You just open your camera, take a picture, or you can hit Scan QR code from within the mobile Chrome, or not Chrome, I'm sorry, mobile Microsoft Edge browser or app, and then you'll just scan it and everything will link up. You don't even have to log into your account again. Also, it is linked directly to Pinterest for some reason. I've been trying to find out why it is, and it just wouldn't tell me. I think Pinterest probably just paid Microsoft some money, but that's just a personal opinion, not fact. If I hit no thanks, it goes back to the collections section, even if you're not logged in. It lets you create and sign into a profile to get access to some of the similar things that I mentioned about Firefox having an account. It's just through Microsoft. Then by clicking on the drop down over here, you gain access to the full settings. This is where you would go if you say download something and need to find out where you saved it to. It also is where you can add and install apps and manage collections, get prints. One of the neat features that I like is this web capture option, which you can get to by hitting Control-Shift-S or by clicking on the dropdown and then clicking web capture. What you then get is this little icon up here. It says free select or full page, and I'm going to hit free select. What that does is it lets me sort of sample a range of the web page. For example, just this welcome brokers section up. And when I let go of the cursor, it opens up another little drop down here. I can choose to copy, which is what I'm going to do now. And then if I reopen my paint window, I can then just Control V and paste immediately. So I don't have to just copy a full web page or print off a full screen. If I want to, I can just copy and paste little snippets of websites directly and easily by clicking through the menu options. That's something that Firefox really doesn't have. And I think it's really useful if you're not very web savvy or if you're not sure how to take a full screenshot of something. The other option that you get when you're doing these web captures is to just copy the full page. And what that'll do is it will copy an entire section, or not section, but the full web page that you're browsing. So you can just copy it and save it to a note or a Word document or whatever you're trying to do for later. It also lets you access drawing tools. So for instance, if I wanted to circle a specific section and make a note for later, I can change the line thickness of where I want to draw, and I can choose the color. And then on the web page, let's say I wanted to remind myself to pull the logo from this website. I could just write it like that and say, pull logo. And please forgive my handwriting. Then I can save it by clicking on the save icon and hit X. If I click on the little drop down here, I'm going to click Show in Folder. Then, as you can see, it went to my Downloads folder locally. And if I open up that web capture, this is the full print of the web page with my little drawing on it. Now, the little drawings are useful, and I personally use them while I'm making my notes for Tech Tuesday. As I run through a bunch of different websites, or maybe I'm trying to compare things about, Google Chrome to Microsoft Edge, which we're going to do here in a second, then what I'll do often is I'll actually open it in Edge, and then I'll get a screenshot, annotate what I want, and I'll throw it into a OneNote folder. But here is where I think Edge really comes into its own as a browser. And it's something that I personally think is useful, but I don't know how often everyone else will use it. If you're a fan of, PDF documents, or if you use a lot of PDF documents, then I'd highly recommend looking into using Microsoft Edge in order to do that work. And the reason is Adobe likes to cost people money. Adobe Reader has a free trial, but it's not actually free for life. If you sign up with a bunch of different email accounts, you can kind of get past it, and you can use Adobe Reader pretty well, but it won't let you do much more than just use and view PDFs, and you have to pay a monthly fee. If you have a Microsoft computer, like I do here, and you have Microsoft Edge, the new version, then you don't need that at all. This is just an example of a fillable form that I've opened in Microsoft Edge. Now, not only do you have the familiar view of Microsoft Edge with all of the full abilities to use the browser, but you also gain access to these drawing tools, the highlight tools, and the erase functions. You can also just click and start typing like a fillable form. I'm just going to put in my name here as a sample to show you that I can type. And right down here in the signature area, let's say I didn't want to just type my signature or insert an actual digital signature. One thing I could do is use that drawing tool again with a moderate thickness on my line. I can just start writing my name. Or in my case, because my handwriting is pretty bad, just my initials right here. Then I can save it, or I can save it as a different thing. I'm just going to hit save, and then I'm going to close this document. If I then right-click on my PDF here in my save folder, I'm going to open it with Adobe Reader. And we might get some ads because I think this might still be the sample version. But as I scroll down, I've got my signature right in here in this line. And I was correct. It's going to try to make us make it our default and a bunch of other things. But I also have my name typed in here. It saved my changes. If I then close out of it and just reopen it in Microsoft Edge, it might take it a minute, then I still have all that information saved as well. And this is communicatable across anything that views PDFs. So you could see my signature here in the Adobe Reader. You'll see it in Adobe Premiere and pretty much anything else that uses Adobe for PDF. The other thing that you gain access to is obviously an erasure tool. So if I wanted to erase my signature from there, I would just click erase. And what I use a lot if I'm taking notes on a web page is the ability to highlight information. So I just click on highlighter and I can highlight the text. Another thing that I can do is I can hit pin toolbar. And what that does is it pins the toolbar to the top of the screen. I can scroll through multiple pages now, and the toolbar will just sort of follow along. I can adjust my zoom using these buttons over here, and I can even fit the PDF to the width of my page by clicking on this icon here. Also, I can rotate the page freely using the rotate button. And those are all free PDF tools that come with the Edge browser. A lot of web browsers have what I would call similar functionality, but not in depth. For instance, I'm going to leave Edge again and try opening this with Firefox, just as an example. Now, Firefox gives me the ability to view this, but I can't actually edit it. As you can see, this PDF document contains forms. Filling in forms is not supported. I also can't annotate it by using a little magic marker, and I can't really do much other than print or download a PDF by using Firefox. And that goes similarly, believe it or not, to Chrome, at least the last version of Chrome that I used. I tend to shy away from Chrome because it passes a lot of my data onto Google, like I mentioned before, but it is something that the Chromium browser can do. But Chrome just hasn't fully implemented it. The other thing I want to mention about Microsoft Edge, if you're planning on trying to use it as a main browser, is the same sort of short side with with Google selling your data and gaining access to everything, is the exact same thing that Edge does, just for Microsoft. So really, if you're trying to use it as a main internet browser, you wind up running into the same issues. You're just sharing all of your data with whoever's providing the service. I personally trust Microsoft a little bit more than Google in that regard, because Google is well, they don't have the best track record for when they're keeping users safe and they sell your data a lot. Microsoft will sell your data as well, but they tend to keep it a little bit more private, in my opinion. A lot of these online resources and a lot of different tech manufacturers have sort of moved toward a model of making notes and keeping track of everything you do online, which is why I prefer to use Firefox as a main browser and why I use Microsoft Edge as a backup for viewing PDFs to avoid having to pay Adobe a fee. If you're actually doing PDF creation, you still will need something like Adobe Premiere, but nowadays, I don't see much of a need to pay for something like Adobe Reader, especially when you have Microsoft Edge to interact with PDFs. But that's generally my opinion on internet browsers. If you have any general questions about internet browsers in general, or how to get the most out of Firefox or Microsoft Edge, please feel free to let me know. I will be online for the next few minutes to answer any other questions, but that's really about all you need to know about how to interact with Microsoft Edge now that it's fully unlocked and released. I'd recommend using it for PDFs, but like I said, for a main internet browser, I'd recommend using Firefox. It's really top notch. And if you're fully integrated into Google all the way, then maybe Google Chrome is for you. Either way, if you have any other questions about web browsers or when not to use different ones, you can reach out to me by contacting me directly at tlevine@sierraandstone.com, or just by giving me a call at 513-487-5390. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this webinar and I hope you have a great day.